So we're back here with Max and we're talking about movement, and we were just talking about blocking movement by using the orthotic, but I just wanted to ask you, Max, when you first got this brace and you first started actually moving in a way that was at an athletic level, I assume you saw some limitations. What were those limitations?
Yeah, once I first got in the gym and began to move and learn the language of basic movement, became very obvious when I started seeing the prototypical ways of movement and then comparing my own movement to those. And one of the first things I noticed was an extreme lack of rotational stability with my brace. And so originally, when I came in, one of the common designs in orthotics is to use an ankle joint that's made up of gummy structures. It sounds a bit weird, but you have these two little gummies that fit in there and they act as an elastic to allow your ankle to move up and down. But the negative consequence of that is it opened up my leg to all this external rotation. So when I was coming out of a squat and trying to externally rotate my hip, I had nothing connecting my brace to the ground. It was just rotating back and forth on those gummies, and I knew that was an immediate problem I needed to fix.
Yeah, so this is an interesting conversation right here, is that in terms of stability, and we talked about this a lot before, is we want to establish, for example, at the shoulder, an externally rotated shoulder, because that's a stable shoulder.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with the hips. When I squat, I want to be able to push my knees out. If I don't have that rotational stability, in terms of position and application of force, I'm going to run into a lot of problems. So that being said, you noticed that, and then what was the first tweak you made to the brace in terms of your ankle?
Yeah, so the big highlight here is I don't have rotational control, or it's really difficult for me because I'm missing the lateral side of my knee.
So this is without the brace?
This is without the brace, yeah. So the whole purpose of the brace is to provide that control, that stability, so I can actually drive force through my leg. But then I noticed it was being sabotaged by these joints that really weren't designed for functional movement. So the first step I made was to go to a solid ankle, a solid carbon fiber ankle. So I thought, okay, first things first, let's lock up that ankle so we solve the problem of knee control. So now I have a much more stable surface. I can use my body weight to drive my feet into the ground, use that as an anchor point, have that hook into the rest of the brace for stability, and then use the musculature I do have, my gluteus maximus medius, to rotate out the best I can.
Do you feel like that was making you feel safer in terms of your knee stability because of that ankle being anchored in, or was it just you being able to move more freely? Because I know that you're taking away degrees of freedom in order to find stability, but did it make you feel more free, or what was it? Did it make you feel safer? What was that feeling that you had while you were moving?
So it absolutely added more stability physically. I mean, it went up straight through my knee and applied pressure to the exact point I was lacking pressure. And it's a very interesting process you have to go through in terms of where do we make compromises to achieve the ultimate goal. And that brings me to what I'm working on now with my ankle, whereas I'm trying to maintain that same rotational stability, but now add back in what I lost, add back in the dorsiflexion and the plantar flexion. Because as I've gotten more advanced and try to push my movements to the next level, I notice the other areas. Now that my knee's stable, I go down and look at my ankle and say, how is my ankle not contributing the stability that I see in a normal human model?
Mm-hmm. So here's the interesting thing. You weren't taught these things. This is something that you have kind of explored. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So in terms of movement, exploration is so important. And Max has just been forced into exploring because he really wants to achieve. And you said something that really resonated with me, which was, what is the compromise that you need to make in order to achieve the ultimate goal? For Max, the ultimate goal, as for anyone here wanting to move better, is the freedom of motion. And what Max has done is he's explored what are the compromises that he has to make, what are the changes that he has to make in order to maximize his performance at every stage of progression. So it doesn't matter if we're dealing with technology in terms of an orthotic or our bodies, we're gonna have to go through the same steps. And when it comes to human movement, The body moves exactly the same whether you're an adaptive athlete or not. We are all in constant state of adaptation, so we're technically all adaptive athletes. So that's why I was asking you earlier, is, do you feel comfortable with the term adaptive athlete? And he said, I'm not hung up on any of those. And same thing with me, because I'm also an adaptive athlete. I'm in a constant state of adaptation. But what we want you to understand is, what we want you to be encouraged to do is, no matter what your situation may be, if you just want to move better, you have an injury, you have an orthotic, you're in a wheelchair, you use crutches, whatever that may be, you're going to have to go through the same exploration. As you go through that, you're going to find certain stages and points of performance that are universal and transferable, and when you find those, all of a sudden you can formalize those, and that's how you develop a practice and a method. But Max is a clear example of that, and we just want you to be inspired and encouraged to want to explore.